an opportunity here to provide leadership, support, and a voice to the voiceless. The sacrifices that we made during our service do not end here. We carry on. We push forward, and we give hope and inspiration through love, community, and support. Stay free.
Rights and freedoms in this country are absolutely everything to me, because I personally know the sacrifice required in order to get them back once they're gone. So when my brothers and sisters call Stand 2, be sure I'll be there.
Legacy media will play their games, right? Like, this isn't about this or that. This is about freedom, period.
The only thing necessary for evil to triumph is for good men to do nothing. Brothers and sisters in uniform, whether you're a police officer, military, check your hearts. Look where we're going. Man, wake up. I beg you.
If the veterans can't stand up and get a message across to the government, I don't know who can. I don't know. But we're going to give it our best shot. And I think we have a chance to win this and do it. But we need your help. And we need you to come, and we need you to stand too. Thanks for listening, everybody. We'll talk again soon.
pressed their rubber, sold out to the merchant shelves. Minutes after they took out from the bottomless pit, my head was made strong by the hand of the Almighty. We forward in this generation triumphantly. Won't you help to sing these songs of freedom? It's all I ever have. Redemption songs, redemption songs. Emancipate yourselves from mental slavery. None but ourselves can free our minds. Oh, have no fear for atomic energy, 'cause none of them can stop the time. How long shall they kill our prophets while we stand aside and look? Some say it's just a part of it. Got to fulfill the book. Won't you help to sing these songs of freedom? It's all I ever have. Redemption songs, redemption songs, redemption songs. Emancipate yourselves from mental slavery. None but ourselves can free our minds. Oh, have no fear for atomic energy, 'cause none of them can stop the time. How long shall they kill our prophets while we stand aside and look? Some say it's just a part of it. Got to fulfill the book. Won't you help to sing these songs of freedom? It's all I ever have. Redemption songs, redemption songs. It's all I ever have. Redemption songs, redemption songs, redemption songs.
Hey, what's up, troops? Jeff Evely, the magnanimous GenX'er Male, back with you now on this 28th day of February 2024. Alrighty, we got a great show lined up for you guys today. First one on the board this morning, though, this afternoon where I am, but whatever, is Century 2020 over on YouTube and also on Rumble. Hit me up twice. Awesome. Shiloh over on Rumble is saying, not late today, Sergeant Major. Best daily medicine for me. Thank you, V4F, for standing on guard for us. Yeah, it's our pleasure, brother. And thank you so much for the kind words. I know it really does help to know that this is helpful for people out there, especially other veterans, because Shiloh and I have corresponded before. So, yeah, he's another veteran, and it's always great to hear that. So, Calgary Jaybird on Rumble. I don't believe I've heard from you before. Says, good morning, friends, and giving us the coffee. And FD Shockwave giving us a triple slashy and the good morning. Jen Mac 82 says good morning and giving us the // Sawyer says, hi, Jeff. Hey, what's up, man? Thanks for always being with us. And Chet Chisholm says, hi, Jeff. And he's giving us the goat. Hey, Chet, how you doing, brother? Yeah, Chet and I were texting there yesterday. Man, oh, man, there's a lot going on in Nova Scotia. We should do a catch up sometime soon, brother. I really enjoyed our last chat there. And I know you got a lot of insight into what's going on in Nova Scotia in particular with regards to the healthcare system or lack thereof. It's a really sad state of affairs. And I saw some other stuff there, like Nova Scotia is doing all kinds of things now, lowering standards, that is. I think they're going to allow people to be teachers in Nova Scotia, even if they don't have an undergrad. It's just going to be like a 2-year teacher's diploma or something like that. And, I'm not necessarily against that either. I always thought it was a little bit overkill to get an undergrad to be a high school teacher. I mean, you can teach the 11th grade if you have the 12th grade, basically. Like, as long as you can master the material, it should be good to go. And Keith has given us the // right back at you, brother. Alpha of the Beatles, // Oh, and I am not streaming on my personal X account today, as I usually do, guys. I got a suspension, but I'll talk about that when we get into it here. So just in case anybody out there is not watching on my X account, you should just jump over to the Veterans for Freedom one. We're still there, and we're still in all the other places. So Steve says, I'm not afraid. Well, that is good. I mean, fear is their only weapon, really, right now. I mean, there's lawfare and all that stuff, but really it all comes down to fear. So as long as you can get past that, I think we'll be just fine. It doesn't nothing else really matters beyond that. Keith says, so how are you doing as we wait? Okay, I think you're talking to somebody else. Binks is giving us the // Rob is here. Hey, brother. Says good morning, afternoon to all patriots and bigots out there, giving us the Canadian maple leaf and the // Darlene is here as always, says, well, hello, everyone. I just happened to catch this live. And giving us the hearts and says, share. Yes, please. I could use all the help I can get. And Serena says, hello from Calgary. Hey, what's up out there? Cindy says, good afternoon, Jeff. And giving us the hearts. Good day, friends. And Terry is here. My most favorite boomer says, good afternoon. Good afternoon to you. And Andrew says, good morning. Hi, Jeff Avely. And giving us the // All right, guys, I'm going to go ahead and dive into this sucker. Let's get it on the go. Here is our philosophy quote for the day. This is Sigmund Freud. He's one of my favorites. I have read quite a bit of his work. So, he says, most people do not really want freedom because freedom involves responsibility, and most people are frightened of responsibility. And hence the title for today. Most people are frightened. And because, with responsibility, there's a certain amount of risk. With freedom in particular, there's a certain amount of risk that comes along with that. And I think the Americans tend to be more accepting of that idea than any other country in the world. They like things to be a little bit risky. People are going to fail in their system, and they do understand that, but it's worth it for all of the rewards that are reaped from having the freedom to live as you see fit. And of course, they've been driving technology and economic prosperity all over the world for, generations now. So, it seems that cost benefit analysis really does bear out that course of action. So, but unfortunately, most people are chickens. So that's something that we have to overcome. But I'll tell you what, one thing I'm always kind of pointing out here is that the majority, as in most people, that Sigmund Freud is talking about, have never really been relevant in terms of shaping the course of history. The majority, the mob, they've never really accomplished anything in terms of, steering history in the right direction. It's always a small minority of exceptional people, the likes of which we have all over the chats here this morning. So there is that. We get to be those people. This is just our turn to shape the course of history, everybody. All right. So here is our meme for the day. And this is a Trudeau meme. It's also a Simpsons meme. This is Principal Skinner, and somebody's put Trudeau's hair on him. And it looks pretty great, actually. And on the top panel, he's saying, am I out of touch? And then on the bottom panel, he says, no, it's the truckers who are racist. And he's wearing blackface. Awesome. I love this meme. This is pretty fantastic. And I think this is actually, Principal Skinner is in the school in the episode himself. And he says, am I really so out of touch? No, it's the children who are wrong. But that's about the size of things right now with our fearless dear leader. Okay, here is my my Twitter suspension, X, whatever. And I submitted my appeal. I took a little screenshot so everybody could see it. It says, thanks for your appeal. You appealed 3 tweets. So I got banned for 3 tweets. And it was for incitement to violence. It was something about violence. And here are the 3 tweets. The first one says, CPAC Day 3. It's Donald Trump Day. I'm in the main venue listening to speeches as we are awaiting the arrival. Not my best work. Awaiting the arrival of the greatest boomer who has ever lived. Correction, Eddie Cornell was actually speaking at the International Crisis Summit yesterday. That event was in the same hotel. And then the next tweet says, at real Donald Trump arrives. And I've got a link in there. And then there's one here that says, the arrival of at real Donald Trump. So I think I'm just posting some videos here and I'm tagging them and I'm saying the arrival of at real Donald Trump. And somehow this got reported as violence, and I actually got a suspension. So I couldn't get into my account this morning, couldn't access any of my bookmarks. I kind of had to do the whole show from scratch, but I think it's going to be okay. So I appealed it like I always do. And the last time this happened to me, I did appeal it and I was waiting months and months for a response. But I did get this morning. I got a response after I got my show set up. Actually, it came in fairly quickly, but it was pretty early this morning. But I, wasn't paying attention to my email. I was trying to get set up for the show, so I missed it. But here's what they sent to me. It says, "Hello, our support team has reviewed your account, and it appears we made an error. We've determined there was no violation and have restored your account to full functionality. We sincerely apologize for any inconvenience and appreciate you taking the time to submit your appeal request to us. Thanks, Twitter." And it's not X, it's Twitter for some reason. So anyway, I guess we still got some cleaning up to do with this whole X platform there, Elon Musk. But I gather perhaps it was just a few of these trolls out there who go ahead and submit these frivolous complaints. But you would think that somebody would actually look at it and say, there's no violence in here anywhere. He just happens to be, a Trump guy. So, yeah, I don't know what to make of that whole thing. But anyway, it is restored. So all is well in the world. All right. So Bill C-63. This is the hot topic for the last couple of days. The Trudeau regime is introducing the latest and least greatest form of censorship in Canada. This is their latest attempt to curb free speech in Canada. And this is a monster of a bill. So I just wanted to take a couple of minutes and look at it here. Like, I haven't read the whole thing. I don't know if anybody has read the whole thing, but this is absolutely monstrous. Look at the size of this thing. Here's the table of contents. Like part 1. Oh, wait a second. We've got the part 1 Online Harms Act, purpose of the act, Digital Safety Commission of Canada, Digital Safety Ombudsperson of Canada. It's an ombudsman, of course. And ombudsman, as in man, really does mean person. And if you look at the etymology of the word, that is Digital Safety Ombudsperson of Canada, Digital Safety Office of Canada, duties of operators and regulated services. And it just goes on and on and on all the way down here. We're into the hundreds of sections, 143 sections now. And then we're coming to consequential amendments, blah, blah, blah. So it's absolutely monstrous. And if you can see my scroll bar over on the right there, I'm barely into it here as I go down and down and down. This thing is hundreds of pages long. It might be somewhere near 200 pages long, something like that. I think if I ever got into that House of Commons, I would probably pass some kind of a bill that says no bill should ever be more than about 3 pages long. 3 pages, I think. It should be easily digested. Maybe you can allow a little bit more for definitions, so that wouldn't count. But the text of the bill itself shouldn't be more than 3 pages. The average person should be able to digest it. And this, I think, is indicative of just how nefarious a tactic they're using right here, where they've completely overwhelmed the populace with this enormous bill so that nobody can really understand what the hell it is. It's going to take us forever to chew through this thing and find everything wrong with it. But here, I just want to show you. So they're regulating social media. Of course, they're going to shut it all down because hatred and protection of children and blah, blah, blah. So I just wanted to come down here for what they're actually defining. We'll start this off with the definition of a social media service. It says, means a website or application that is accessible in Canada, the primary purpose of which is to facilitate interprovincial or international online communication among users of the website or application by enabling them to access and share content. Okay. So that sounds like a social media service. But then we've got, for greater clarity, a social media service includes an adult content service, namely a social media service. Okay, so you've got a definition that includes the word that is focused on enabling its users to access and share pornographic content. I don't think that applies to Facebook or X or any of those things. I mean, I guess that's available on X, but it's not the focus. And also a live streaming service, namely a social media services that focuses on enabling its users to access and share content by live stream. So they're definitely going after the live streamers like me with this thing. That much is clear. And there's all kinds of other odious provisions in here that we'll get into in a minute. But let's go ahead and see what other people are saying about this. Here's Cosmin Duriez, and he's saying the Liberal online hate bill, C-63, empowers the Human Rights Tribunal to hide the identity of accusers and can even compel gag orders on people who are the subject of online hate complaints. This is a kangaroo court system, full stop, dangerous territory. Yeah, no kidding. It sounds like it's very Kafkaesque, as in Franz Kafka, The Trial. It's a novel basically about Stalinism where we can't know the processes by which the people who are making the decisions that impact our lives are arriving at their conclusions. And two, we have to engage in the behavior in order to find out whether it is legal. So all very Stalinist, of course, which is standard for this regime. But here he's got a graphic of a couple of sections that he's clipped out here. It says, non-disclosure of identity, commission. The commission may deal with a complaint in relation to a discriminatory practice described in this section, in section 13, without disclosing to the person against whom the complaint was filed or any other person the identity of the alleged victim, the individual or group of individuals that has filed the complaint, or any individual who has given evidence or assisted the commission in any way in dealing with the complaint, if the commission considers that there is a real and substantial risk that any of those individuals will be subjected to threats, intimidation, or discrimination. Yeah, I think that's always going to be the case, right? I mean, this is obviously the way that this is written is intended to leave it wide open to abuse. And you can't know your accuser. You can't fully understand the complaint that is against you. It's going to put the accused at a severe disadvantage. And it's basically a witch hunt. I mean, how do you defend yourself against these things? This is all part of forming a complete defense. Would be full disclosure, right? Like that's an element of the principles of procedural fairness is that you get full disclosure, but I guess that's not the case in here. It says non-disclosure of identity, persons. The commission may order a person who, in the course of the commission's dealing with a complaint in relation to discriminatory practice described in section 13, has learned the identity of alleged victim, the individual or group of individuals that filed that complaint, or any individual who has given evidence or assisted the commission in any way in dealing with the complaint, not to disclose that identity if the commission considers that there is a real and substantial risk that any individual whose identity was learned will be subjected to threats, intimidation, or discrimination. Like that sounds like a basically, it's basically a repeat of what they just said. A bunch of gook anyway. And here is, he's doing a little tweet thread here. He says, a lot of the crucial details were left out of the government's technical briefing today. The final fine can reach up to $70,000, not just $20,000 as reported. That is, the government can claim a $50,000 cut more than the victim's $20,000 compensation. So he's tweeting out the sections here. This is from section 13, complaint substantiated, section 13. Here we have 53.1. It says, if at the conclusion of an inquiry, the member or panel conducting the inquiry finds that a complainant in relation to the discriminatory practice described in section 13 is substantiated, the member or panel may make one or more of the following orders against the person found to be engaged or to have engaged in the discriminatory practice. A, in order to cease the discriminatory practice and take measures, blah, blah, blah. B, in order to pay compensation of not more than $20,000 to any victim identified in the communication that constituted blah, blah, blah. And C, in order to pay the penalty of not more than $50,000 to the receiver general if the member panel considers it appropriate, having regard to the nature, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so $20,000 to the complainant and $50,000 to the receiver general if they're found guilty. Do you think that maybe incentivizes the abuse of this process a little bit? I mean, you thought Jessica Unive, shave my balls or else, was bad. Like, just imagine all the trolls that are going to come out of the woodwork looking to cash in that $20,000. And of course, the receiver general is getting a nice cut here too. They're actually getting more than any victim would. I mean, professional victim, that is. Any professional victim would, with their $50,000 cut. Yeah, this is going to be absolutely wide open to abuse. And I think that is the point. It's to get everybody at each other's throats and incentivize all of this kind of abuse against other Canadians. It'll stifle the free speech without the government even really having to do anything. Like, people are going to be so on guard against this kind of thing, being so stifled in such an Orwellian prison of their own fear that nobody's going to want to speak out against or criticize any leftist ideas, essentially. So just a terrible, terrible bill. And of course, it's, like I said, a monstrous one. So it's not intended for consumption by the average person, that is for sure. And Cosmin Duriez is also tweeting out this True North article that they put together for this too, so you guys can check that out on your own. But just incredible. Okay, so the whole idea, this is something that I was just kind of thinking about this morning. There is a part in there that says that you don't even get to know your accuser in this one. And a lot of the time, like we talk about, just in basic procedural fairness, you should be able to know the right of your accuser. It doesn't really seem like that provision is as well protected in Canada as it is in the United States. I was just kind of digging around on that a little bit, but in the United States, you absolutely have the right to know your accuser. And I don't see that actually spelled out anywhere in Canada. So this is from the Government of Canada's website here, Section 11 of the Charter. This is Charterpedia, Government of Canada. And it says the legal rights apply to those, quote, charged with an offense, close quote. Provision, any person charged with an offense has the right. Now, mind you, like, we're talking about human rights tribunals, which are kangaroo courts to begin with. But this is right out of the Charter. So it wouldn't, I don't know if it would be a criminal offense. Who the hell knows anymore? But anyway, here is the Section 11 Charterpedia points on this. It says provision 11. Any person charged with an offense has the right, A, to be informed without unreasonable delay to the specific offense. B, to be tried within a reasonable time. C, cannot be compelled to be a witness in proceedings against that person in respect to the offense. D, to be presumed innocent until proven guilty according to law in a fair and public hearing by an independent and impartial tribunal. E, not to be denied reasonable bail without a just cause. F, except in the case of an offense under military law tried before a military tribunal to the benefit of trial by jury, where the maximum punishment for the offenses is imprisonment for 5 years or a more severe punishment. I didn't know that, actually, that you got to be tried with something that would result in 5 years imprisonment in order to be tried by jury. Okay, and G, has the right not to be found guilty on account of any act or omission unless at the time of the act or omission it constituted an offense under the Canadian or international law or was criminal according to the general principles of law recognized by the community of nations. H, if finally acquitted of the offense, not to be tried for it again, and if found guilty and punished for the offense, not to be tried or punished for it again. That's the double jeopardy clause. I, if found guilty of the offense, then the punishment for the offense has been varied between the time of commission and the time of sentencing to the benefit of the lesser punishment. Okay, so nowhere in there does it actually say that we have the right to know our accusers. So I dug into it a little bit more, and I found this paper here, which is let me see. Okay, so This is on page 484. Don't let me forget that. But this paper is from Can Lee, which is a really great resource for all kinds of legal papers, court cases, all of this kind of stuff. If you're looking for case law, precedent, that kind of thing. If you're, being a self-represented litigant, as I am in a couple of judicial reviews, and probably pretty soon when it comes to my assault charge that I got to go face. It was Antifa, so whatever. But here is Regina v. MER, and this is on Can Lee. You can see all the citations and stuff up there. File number SEC 02051. It's from 1989. And if I go down a little bit here, they don't have the whole thing up here, but if I go down to page 484, so I'm just kind of questioning this, right? So it says the right to face one's accusers is not in this day and age to be taken in the literal sense. In my opinion, it is simply the right of an accused person to be present in court to hear the case against him and to make answer and defense to it. In R.V. Lee Kun, 1915, blah, 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 the Lord Chief Justice England said, the case made against him and have the opportunity, having heard it, of answering it. The presence of the accused means not merely that he must be physically in attendance, but also that he must be capable of understanding the nature of proceedings. This statement adopted by blah, blah, blah. The right of an accused to be present at his trial is not an absolute right. For example, he may be removed from the courtroom for misconduct. Okay, so they're going to get into all kinds of other stuff here. But it does look like this seems to be the attitude of the judiciary here. It's not necessarily a right of ours to face our accusers. So that's probably something that needs to be shored up in legislation at some point. Because, like I said, this is exactly the kind of loophole that's going to leave us wide open to kind of lawfare and judicial abuse, the likes of which I think we're going to see a tidal wave of if this bill actually gets through. So here, okay, so one of the things that they're talking about in this bill is the protection of children, and we saw there previously where there's a reference to pornography, and revenge porn seems to be a topic that is out there all over the place. When we're talking about this bill, they're talking about like banning this revenge porn and blah, blah, blah. But here we have Justice Law's website, and this is the Criminal Code of Canada. And here I have section 16211, and it says, everyone knowingly publishes, distributes, transmits, sells, makes available, or advertises an intimate image of a person, knowing that the person depicted in the image did not give their consent to the conduct, or being reckless as to whether or not that person gave their consent to that conduct, is guilty of A, an indictable offense and liable to imprisonment for a term of not more than 5 years, or B, an offense punishable on summary conviction. So if you publish somebody's nudes without their consent, it's already a crime under this section of the Criminal Code of Canada. So whatever they're telling you about this new bill C-63, it is not a ban on revenge porn, because we already have that under the criminal code. But this is what they're going to do, right? This is what they always do. They're pushing forward this agenda to stifle free speech. And they're going to wrap it all up in this safety stuff, that we want to protect children. We want to stop revenge porn. And so when people come out and criticize the bill, that's what they're going to attack back with, is they're going to say, oh, you're pro revenge porn, and oh, you're pro child abuse. So that is the tactic. They throw in all this other stuff. But as you can see, it's utterly superfluous, because we already have a section of the criminal code that makes it illegal to share revenge porn. Okay, and here is Real Andy Lee, Special Rebel Rapporteur, and she says, my friends, we are discussing preemptively silencing opinions by manipulating the criminal code based on someone else's fear of those opinions before they have ever been voiced, without the need for evidence that a criminal offense has actually been committed. And I was talking about this yesterday a little bit. It's like pre-thought crime they have written into this bill right now. I mean, there's pre-crime from Minority Report, and there's thought crime from Orwell in 1984. But here in Canada, we're actually going to have pre-thought crime. So I don't think even any of the dystopian novelists thought this up. Like nobody really saw this one coming. This is like next level authoritarian crazy. And here is the section she has highlighted. It's under the heading, New Peace Bond designed to prevent the commission of hate propaganda offenses and hate crimes. Changes to the criminal code will allow any person who reasonably fears that someone will commit a hate propaganda offense or hate crime to seek a court-ordered peace bond to be imposed on that person. So you can preemptively seek a peace bond to keep somebody from spreading hate propaganda, so-called, on a social media platform. Okay, and the part that's highlighted here says, the peace bond would allow a judge to impose conditions on an individual where there are reasonable grounds to fear that they will commit a hate propaganda offense or a hate crime, such as where there are reasonable grounds to fear that someone will willfully or unintentionally promote hatred against an identifiable group. As this is a preventative measure to protect all people in Canada, there would not be the need for evidence that an offense has actually been committed. Holy smokes. So we're doing away with, knowing your accuser. I mean, I'm not so sure that we necessarily have a right to that. It doesn't appear to be the case, but it's certainly a convention, I would say. I think most people are under the assumption that we have that right. So you don't get to know your accuser and you don't get to see the evidence. And it's a pre-thought crime. So it's to prevent you from ever having the opportunity to speak the blasphemous words. Oh my God. And the last line here says, as with some other peace bonds, it would require Attorney General consent before it could be used. Now, I'm not so sure about that one because I'm pretty sure I saw some comments there that perhaps they're not. Perhaps that's not required in all cases. It might be for this particular peace bond, but some of what they're doing is they're doing away with that kind of consent, and I think we'll get into that here in a second. Okay, and here we have some of the other sections out of the same legislation. Now, wait a second. This is part of a tweet. Let me just show you who it is before I dive into that. It's Roja Razel, and they say under the Online Harms Act, Bill C-63, the government can put you under house arrest or force you to wear an ankle bracelet if someone else believes that you will write something hateful online in the future. Pre-crime plus thought crime equals pre-thought crime. Okay, I hadn't read that before, but it seems like other people are coming to the same conclusion that I am here. They've introduced this legislation like for to ban pre-thought crime. Okay. So here is section 810.012, para 1. A person may, with the Attorney General's consent, lay information before a provincial court judge if the person fears on reasonable grounds that another person will commit an offense under section 318 or any of its subsections 319.1 or 2.1, or an offense under section 320.1.001. Okay. So we'll take a look at some of those sections here in a minute. Here's Viva Fry, and he says, anyone who, quote, advocates for or promotes genocide, close quote, is subject to life in prison. How is the government going to define, quote unquote, genocide? Is it from the river to the sea? Israel has the right to exist. It's okay to be white. Stop funding Ukraine. There's no possible way this could be abused by a corrupt government who lock up their political opponents for life. Yeah, I think that is exactly what's going on here. And here is the section that they were just mentioning there previously. So you can get this peace bond put on you if there are grounds to believe that you will commit an offense under section 318. Here's section 318 right here. It says every person who advocates or promotes genocide is guilty of an indictable offense and is liable to imprisonment for life. Holy smokes. So you're going to be locked up as long as Paul Bernardo if you post on social media. Well, from the river to the sea, I don't think that that's going to be captured there. Now, on X, you're not allowed to advocate for genocide that way. But I don't think that our current communist government is all that concerned with Hamas, especially since we see them marching in the streets with all of the pro-Hamas demonstrations. The communists, like Hamas, is part of the global progressive movement, as Judith Butler pointed out there. She's a seminal thought leader in the progressive movement, a third wave feminist, and the brain mother of gender as a social construction. So I think that that's probably as about authoritative as an opinion as you're going to get when it comes to Hamas's relationship with the global progressive movement. And here is okay. So I'm gonna move on here. But so that's that one section there. That's 318, and the other one is 320. So you can get your pre-thought crime, whatever it is, peace bond to keep you from posting whatever on the internet. And there's another one of these pre-thought crimes is under Section 320. So if you're suspected that you may in the future commit a pre-thought crime of 320 under Section 320.1001, and here is 320.1001. This is the text of the bill itself that I was showing on the first tab previously. Hate crime. Okay, it's under the heading hate crime. It says offense motivated by hatred. Everyone who commits an offense under this act or any other act of parliament, if the commission of the offense is motivated by hatred based on race, national or ethnic origin, language, color, religion, sex, age, mental or physical disability, sexual orientation, or gender identity or expression, is guilty of an indictable offense and liable to imprisonment for life. So it's not just going to be an aggravating factor on sentencing anymore. If if it's a hate crime, it used to be the case that hate motivation was something that was taken into consideration when sentencing was considered, but now it's its own category. You are liable to imprisonment for life. And the one that I'm always concerned with is the gender identity or expression that was just introduced in 2017 as prohibited grounds for discrimination under the Canadian Human Rights Act. And of course, this is what basically precipitated the healthcare system's adoption of gender affirming care. And as we've seen in other countries around the world, most notably the UK, where they have that massive lawsuit against Tavistock for just butchering all these impressionable youths into permanent medical patients. So if you're going to, if I'm out there talking about what this is really all about, which is pharmaceutical profits, is that going to be considered hate speech? And am I going to prison for life? It does seem to be the case that, and I mean, like, I'm just basing this on some of my general experiences on social media these days. People will call you a bigot if you believe in protecting children. That's a pretty sad state of affairs in Canada. All right, here's Maxime Bernier's take on it. And it's not really his take, but he's sharing out a thread that says, important thread by lawyer Josh Dehas to understand how vague the concept of hate speech is and how dangerous the Bill C-63 is. So this, I'm going to give you some of this thread here. This is Josh Deha. He says, people keep asking in the Canadian Constitutional Foundation, quote, where's the line between legal speech and hate speech, close quote. The problem is we don't exactly know. If you can't see the line, you can't stay silent. You stay silent to avoid the fine. That's why Bill C-63 is such a big threat to free expression. Allow me to explain. In 2014, the Supreme Court of Canada said in R.V. Wacott, the decision that hatred is only the quote most extreme manifestations, close quote, of the emotion captured by the words quote detestation and quote vilification. Only that type of speech can be outlawed without violating Section 2B of the Charter. Wacott says this does not include expression which, quote, while repugnant and offensive, does not incite the level of aberrance, delegitimization, and rejection that risks causing discrimination or other harmful effects, close quote. That speech is protected. This wording is built into C-36. But how do we know if what we're seeing rises to the level of detestation or vilification? Wacott says, tells us to look for the quote hallmarks of hatred, close quote. This is where things get frightening because some of the quote hallmarks of hatred, close quote, that are things that people should frankly be allowed to say. One of the hallmarks of hatred is quote blaming a group's members for the current problems in society, alleging that they are a powerful menace. Hello, EDI training. This is how DEI consultants talk about white people. This is how feminists sometimes talk about men. Is that hate speech? Hate speech then alleges an identifiable group is, quote, carrying out secret conspiracies to gain global control, close quote. We often hear this about Jewish people. It's anti-Semitic, but do we really want to give the pathetic losers who say that more attention by bringing them to a tribunal? Who say that more? Okay, got it. Yeah. Hate speech may allege a group is, quote, plotting to destroy Western civilization, close quote. This is something that you hear about ethnic groups, religious groups, and LGBT people. It's usually very offensive, but what if some group really is one day plotting to destroy Western civilization? You mean like the Chinese Communist Party? Would that count as... and their affiliates, right? I mean, there's United Front United Front. And there are the triads and all of this stuff. And a lot of times, like I'll use just for short the Chinese, which is not to say, that every expat is necessarily working with them. In fact, there are a lot that came here to escape that kind of despotism. But at the same time, there are certain groups out there who are plotting to destroy the West. Progressives is another great example. It really is just a movement to destroy the West. Okay, hate speech, quote, further delegitimizes the targeted group by suggesting its members are illegal or unlawful, close quote. We've seen a large number of false asylum claims from a particular country lately. If I suggest that they're, quote, illegal or unlawful, close quote, will I face a human rights complaint? Good question. Another hallmark of hate speech is labeling a group as, quote, liars, cheats, criminals, and thugs, quote, parasitic race, or, quote, pure evil. This is certainly means these are certainly mean things to say, but should people risk jail or fines for losing their temper or calling a religious group, for example, quote, pure evil, close quote? Exposure to hatred can also result from expression that equates the targeted group with groups traditionally reviled in society, such as child abusers and pedophiles, close quote. I guess Gays Against Groomers, which argues that gay boys are being pushed into gender transition, better disband. Describing a group's members as, quote, animals or as subhuman, horrible creatures who ought not to be allowed to live, incognizant primates, genetically inferior or lesser breasts, or lesser beasts. I can't compare an extremist religious group that wants to kill me for being gay to animals. I think, what that seems reminiscent of is some of the comments that came out of I can't remember the guy's name, but he's in the Netanyahu regime there, where he was referring to Hamas and its supporters as human animals. You know what? And there are human animals out there on the planet. I mean, I think anybody who's been to a war zone can probably attest to that. It's despicable what humans will do to each other. And we are members of the animal kingdom after all. And I think the whole human project is to overcome the lowly stamps of our origins, as Darwin would have put it, because we're a viciously cruel animal. We're capable of unspeakable cruelty, the likes of which other animals don't even engage in. And Shiloh is just giving me $50 to the Rumble account. I've never actually taken any money onto the Rumble account. It's quite funny. He says, to help cover your costs of producing content. Thank you, Jeff. Well, thanks, brother. I really do appreciate it. Maybe I should monetize at some point, but I just keep doing this kind of volunteer. And, I'm always juggling all these other things, especially when it comes to like my court cases and stuff like that. So, but I probably should set up some kind of legal defense fund because I have some charges against me right now. There is that. Okay, moving on. So Josh is saying, as you can see, it's almost impossible for a lawyer like me who studies free expression to know whether I've committed quote unquote hate speech. It's going to be even harder for regular Canadians to know where to draw the line. As it stands now, hate speech is only prosecuted in criminal courts where the Crown must prove beyond a reasonable doubt that the Walcott standard is met. The charges are only laid in consultation with the Attorney General, who is an expert on law. This is why prosecutions are so rare. With C-63, a civil tribunal will have the power to ruin people's lives where they believe a mere balance of probabilities that the amorphous and confusing definition from Walcott has been met. What's more, social media companies will need to, quote unquote, mitigate this type of content. Now, it is the civil tribunals that I think really scare me with this. And the balance of probabilities, just so everybody understands, that's more likely than not to have occurred. So it's like a 50.1% chance that the allegation is true. It's nowhere near the same standard of evidence that you'll see in a criminal court. Okay, and finally, it says C-63 is a bad bill that will chill an enormous amount of speech that our Constitution protects. When people don't know where the line is, they stay silent to avoid punishment. That makes it hard to have raucous debate on all kinds of issues, which is the point of free speech. Yes, well said. And this is the point of this bill. It's to chill free speech. It's so that people will be too afraid of having to pay $70,000 and have their, sell their homes, ruin their lives for expressing an idea. So, and what the hell is hate speech these days? Anything? Well, it's speech that Justin Trudeau hates, as Pierre Poilievre actually pointed out there. And speaking of Poilievre, here is the Conservative Party of Canada's website. And okay, so another thing that's in this bill is they're selling this as protections for children. So and that's what I was just saying too, is that's going to be the tactic. All of this Anti-free speech legislation is wrapped up in the idea of safety, particularly as it pertains to children. So when somebody wants to criticize the bill, they'll say that you're pro-child abuse and you're pro-revenge porn. But of course, child abuse is already illegal under the criminal code, as is revenge porn, like I just showed you guys. But here is what's up on the Conservative Party's website. It says, Common Sense Conservatives will protect children. Ottawa, Ontario, the Honourable Pierre Poilievre, leader of the Conservative Party of Canada and the official opposition, released the following statement, quote, Common Sense Conservatives believe that we should criminalize and enforce laws against sexually victimizing a child or re-victimizing a survivor online, bullying a child online, inducing a child to harm themselves, or inciting violence. Criminal bans on intimate content communicated without consent, including deepfakes, must be enforced and expanded. Quote, we believe that these serious acts should be criminalized, investigated by police, tried in court, and punished with jail, not pushed off to new bureaucracy that does nothing to prevent crimes and provides no justice to victims. We do not believe that the government should be banning opinions that contradict the Prime Minister's radical ideology. Common Sense Conservatives will protect our kids and punish criminals instead of creating more bureaucracy and censoring opinions. Close quote. Not too bad. Not too bad coming from the Conservatives. I saw there was a letter that was floating around on X there this morning that was from the official leader of the opposition, and it looked like Pierre Poilievre. But I went to his profile and I couldn't see it up there anywhere. So I'm not entirely sure if it was an authentic letter, but this is authentic. And again, I like that they're singling out the bureaucracy, because that's what this monstrous bill is going to do, is going to create an even more monstrous bureaucracy. And that is really the most odious part of the entire government, really, is that federal bureaucracy. And Bruce Pardy talks about the triumph of the administrative state. And if you just listen to these people, like, they're control freaks, and it's all about empire building. They always want to expand their power. They want to expand the bureaucracy. What did he hire? Like another 100,000 bureaucrats, Justin Trudeau, and they couldn't even make that ArriveCan app that nobody wanted, and apparently has more 5-star ratings than Google itself. So yeah, it's a racket, is what it is. It's an extortion and protection racket, government, that is, especially without the consent of the government. And who's to say that they actually have that at this point in time, especially given that the last couple of elections were rigged by the Chinese, and they violated the Constitution, which is the social contract with the people of Canada. So they did violate the Constitution. Those are the only two things that give them a social license. So I don't really think that they have it right now. And it's official that we have a rogue regime in Canada, right? Okay, so here is the Conservative Party's website again, and we can see now we have several communiques that came out on February 27th. So this was the day that this bill was first came out, and they did the press release and everything. So Conservatives call on the Trudeau government to oppose proposed national security legislation. Okay, that's not related, but just the facts: 1 million more Canadians will have to use food banks in 2024. Common Sense Conservatives will protect children, and Trudeau must come clean on how much money was wasted on a Arrive scam. So there's all kinds of stuff. Like, there was like 4 communiques there that came out on that same day. It seems like this has kind of got people fired up at the very least. I hope so. Because it's freaking odious. I don't think we've ever seen such an odious piece of legislation. I mean, well, I don't know. Bill C-16 and Bill C-4. I would say Bill C-4 is probably the sickest of all, where they're going to jail parents for trying to protect their kids from gender ideology. But here's True North. Leader of the government in the House of Commons, Steve McKinnon, criticizes Pierre Poilievre for not supporting the online harms bill, which proposes $70,000 in fines for so-called hate speech and life imprisonment for hate crimes. Okay, so let's hear what this odious dirtbag has to say.
The Conservatives has said that this legislation is an attack on freedom of expression.
Yeah, of course they do.
So what will you be doing to try and get this legislation passed?
Well, Mr. Poilievre came out in support of a digital ID last week. And he came out in support of a bill that we think that the government voted against, and we think is flawed. We think that this response is a much more comprehensive and meaningful response to the dangers posed online than the bill that he supports. And it's pretty cynical of Mr. Poilievre to be opposing this bill when he says he wants to protect children as well.
Poilievre does say he doesn't support a digital ID. I guess what other mechanisms?
Well, the bill does.
So what concerns do you have, I guess, then regarding S210? Some Liberal members.
He says he doesn't support a digital ID that is contained in the bill that he supports.
Some Liberal members did vote in favor of it. You know, are they going to be walking back their votes? Have you talked to your caucus about this?
The online harms bill, we think, is a more comprehensive response to the issue, and I suspect that you'll see that Liberal MPs will much prefer that bill.
Yeah. And of course, online harms. Now, when progressives say harm, they mean butt hurt. So everybody's going to jail for life for butt hurt. Okay. Here's Arif Virani, and he says online harms can have real world consequences. We are taking action to protect kids online. Okay. Whatever, dude. Let's check it out.
We know the harms we experience online can have real world impacts with tragic, sometimes fatal consequences.
Yeah, this is from the presser, by the way. And you notice they never include any like statistics. So like this is data-free decision making that's based on these hypotheticals. And I think somebody's probably going to say it if I don't. But take a look at the background here. What's missing? Well, it's a white male.
And yet, so much of this goes unchecked. I will explain what C63 will do to make our online world safer, but it is important for Canadians, including the Canadians watching right now, to understand why we are doing this. I know why I'm here before you today. I'm the father of 2 youngsters, and like parents and grandparents around Canada, I'm terrified by the dangers that lurk on the internet for our children.
There are tools in place for parents to mitigate those dangers, by the way. I mean, whatever it is that they're talking about.
We have rigorous safety standards for things like my son's Lego at home. Yet somehow, none for the most dangerous toy, not just in my home, but every Canadian home, the screen that is in front of our children's faces. We know the harms we...
Now, I would like to see that legislation that regulates Legos like this. Of course, it's all claptrap. These people, they're just snowing, the average voter. Okay. So here we're talking about protecting children. That's the banner under which they're going to force this odious censorship bill on us. Pre-thought crime bill, that is. And Benny Johnson is tweeting out, Dr. Phil leaves hosts on The View stunned silence after utterly schooling them on lockdowns. Host, pandemic, cut to commercial break. Okay, yeah, that's about the size of it. Now, remember, we had to protect the children, and we had to lock down the schools to protect the children, and we had to give them the jabs to protect the children. And now Sean Hartman is never going to play hockey anymore, for example. Well, this, I think, is exactly what needs to happen across the board. And these nasty, just harpies around the table get schooled by Dr. Phil. I mean, I don't watch daytime television, obviously, but Dr. Phil kind of he seems like he's a pretty sensible guy. So here we go.
Like 08, 09, smartphones came on and kids stopped living their lives and started watching people live their lives. And so we saw the biggest spike and the highest levels of depression, anxiety, loneliness, and suicidality since records have ever been kept. And it's just continued on and on and on. And then COVID hits 10 years later, and the same agencies that knew that are the agencies that shut down the schools for 2 years. Who does that? Who takes away the support system for these children? Who takes them away and shuts it down? And by the way, when they shut it down, they stopped the mandated reporters from being able to see children that were being abused and sexually molested, and in fact sent them home and abandoned them to their abusers with no way to watch, and referrals dropped 50 to 60%. So
there was also a pandemic going on, and they were trying to save
kids' lives. Remember, we know a lot of folks who died during this. So it wasn't, people weren't laying around eating bond, but, well, you know what? We're lucky. Maybe we're lucky they didn't, because we kept them out of the places that they could be sick, because no one wanted to believe we had an issue.
Are you saying no school children died of COVID?
I'm saying it was the safest group. They were the less vulnerable group, and they suffered and will suffer more from the mismanagement of COVID than they will from the exposure to COVID. And that's not an opinion, that's a fact.
Well, Phil?
All right. So, and he actually got an applause from the Harpy audience there. So that's a good sign. I think people are finally kind of waking up to just the egregious harms that have been done. And these are the same people pushing this now. Watch us protect children again, right? These people can't be trusted to protect children. That's not their job to protect children. Like the state is essentially just a freaking junkyard dog. The only thing it's good for really is to pacify the territory and ward off predators. You don't ever let that thing get its head higher than yours, lest he gets the wrong idea about its proper place in the hierarchy. And that's where we are right now, is that junkyard dog seems to think that it owns us. It's higher in the hierarchy than us. Okay, and here is, speaking of harms to children, so here's the Daily Mail, and the headline is Top Canadian Surgeon Reveals Truth About Sex Change Ops. Unearthed video lifts the lid on ill-trained doctors, dying appendages, and dreaded complications. Dr. Alex Langani says lucrative transmedical industry has grown too quickly. Surgeons don't get enough training in rush to provide top and bottom ops. Says read more. Pink-haired Portland surgeon reveals the truth about sex change kids. A sex change surgeon has revealed the dangers of trans procedures, warning of poorly trained doctors, leaving patients with dead appendages and other dreaded complications. Dr. Alex Langani, a clinician at Canada's Metropolitan Centre of Surgery, made damaging revelations about the pretty bad effects of sex change operations while addressing colleagues. The event, sponsored by the World Professional Association of Transgender Health, WPATH, was recorded, and the footage was made public via a records request by the Daily Caller News Foundation. Dr. Langwani joins a growing list of trans experts who, when speaking with like-minded professionals in clinical settings, are more candid about the downsides of trans care than is usually made public. Now, WPATH, I should mention, I showed an article here not too long ago that showed that membership in WPATH has declined dramatically just over the last year. It's been cut to about a third of what it was previously, if memory serves. So that's another good sign. But this is the sickest thing I think that's ever happened in Canada, this stuff. Okay, Dr. Langwani, his Montreal-based clinic and WPATH did not answer our requests for comment. Advocates of trans medicine say it is life-saving among a suicide-prone group. Procedures to remove breasts and alter genitals help trans people live authentically, they say. But critics warn of a cult-like fad with ever more trans people coming out and getting risky procedures, while WPATH and other medical groups are hijacked by ideologues who push reckless standards of care. In the video, Dr. Langani said ever more clinics are catering to rising numbers of trans patients where there can be a lack of training and not proper training, close quote. The expansion gave trans patients access to surgery, but at the cost of quality care, he added. Quote, it's time to make sure that we have the right training, close quote, he said, calling for more fellowships. Some medics performed trans operations so infrequently that they were not, quote unquote, proficient, he warned. They could botch procedures and leave patients with quote-unquote complications, he added. Dr. Lungani said the results of delicate male-to-female genital surgeries known as vaginoplasties, quote, can be pretty bad, close quote. Quote, the most dreaded complication is to perforate the rectum while you are dissecting the vaginal cavity, close quote, he added. Quote, you're very close to the rectum and it's very hard, close quote, he said. Rebuilding the area involves using flesh from the, quote, abdomen, scrotum, or colon, close quote, said Dr. Longarni. Patients have had problems after surgery, he said. Surgical wounds reopen in fully 3/4 of cases. 3/4 of cases. You have a 75% chance of having these, heinous, life-altering complications. It's just sick what they're doing, and people are getting rich off it. Afterward, many patients cannot achieve an orgasm, he said. I don't know if any of them can. Many have to, quote unquote, dilate their newly created vaginal canals with a vibrator-like device used to stop it from collapsing. Yeah, that's because it's a wound and the body is always going to try to heal itself. It is, quote, what the patients call a full-time job for the first few months because it's 4 times a day, close quote, he said. A slide from the preservation or from a presentation describes other post-op horrors, including, quote, rectovaginal fistula, pelvic floor dysfunction, and clitoris necrosis, close quote, when the sex organ goes limp and dies. Lugati's presentation was part of an educational series recorded in September 2022 for clinicians seeking certification from WPATH, a top global authority on gender-affirming care, as it is known. WPATH increasingly comes under fire for promoting trans procedures that critics say are experimental, dangerous, and carried out on patients who just need counseling. Is that hate speech? I wonder if that's hate speech under Bill C-63. The procedures are not a hot button issue in America's culture wars, especially those in children. Surgically altering male to female genitals to match those of the opposite sex, known as vaginoplasties and phalloplasties, are widely understood to be tough and problematic procedures. Women who transition to become men may opt to have a penis constructed from tissue extracted from their arms, although this procedure is also complex and the result is still markedly different to a biological penis. Yeah, they can't get an erection. It doesn't work that way. Removing the breasts of female to male transitioners is simpler, but it can also lead to pain, infections, and such problems as stitches bursting apart, particularly on overweight patients. I've actually known women over the course of my lifetime, that had boob jobs, and even something like that's done all the time at clinics that specialize in it and have been for decades, comes with a certain level of risk. And infections, it's prone to infection. It's quite common. Like every time you go under the knife, you're taking your life in your hands, and it should be a question of whether or not it is necessary. And when it comes to the boob jobs, ladies, go south. Please go south of the 49. Do not let a Canadian doctor touch you. That is just my personal observations, but go down to Florida or something. They got all kinds of great clinics down there. But again, like, you're beautiful just the way you are. But if you're going to do it, please go south of the 49. Okay, so Dr. Lugati's video is just the latest example of a trans expert telling uncomfortable truths about their lucrative multi-billion-dollar businesses. Marcy Bowers, a male to female transitioner surgeon and WPATH president, revealed how puberty blockers left child and young adolescent trans patients unable to experience orgasm while speaking with colleagues. Quote, "I mean, it's really about zero," close quote, she said in a Duke University seminar in 2022. Dr. Blair Peters, a plastic surgeon at Oregon Health and Science University, OHSU, revealed how trans kids face a lifetime of infertility, incontinence, and sexual misery after surgery. Yes, they're in for a lifetime of misery. That's what we're setting them up for. And they're going to be permanent medical patients the whole time. They've got to stay on drugs the whole time. And probably have to go back for multiple, other procedures. The dilation is something that's mentioned in this article as well. They have to keep doing that. And just check out Duchess Lois of Alberta on X there. She is, or they, I guess, I'm not sure what they're going by right now, but I did reach out for an interview. Tough to nail this person down, but male to female transitioner and now applying for MAID because of the misery that's been inflicted on them. In a video interview with a colleague, Dr. Peters said the techniques were still being honed and that, quote, "we're kind of learning and figuring out what works," close quote. Does that sound like they're experimenting on kids to you guys? Because that's what it sounds like to me. It sounds like they're experimenting on kids. And that's not even the worst quote, I think, that I've even showed on this particular program. The CHIO has a partnership. Children's Hospital of Eastern Ontario has a partnership with some I forget what they're called now. It's like Can Trans or Can something Trans Can, and they're talking about looking for participants for a study, people who have undergone this. I mean, young people, basically post-adolescence, 18 years old, when they're talking about the vaginoplasty or phalloplasty, and they want to follow up with them to see how they're doing in a couple of years, because they don't know what the long-term outcomes are of these kinds of surgeries really are. One of the first studies into the side effects of transgender surgeries revealed alarmingly high rates of post-op pain, aching during intercourse, and bladder problems, raising troubling questions for this new frontier of medicine. It's not medicine. A high majority, 81% of those who had gender-affirming surgery in the past 5 years said they endured pain simply from moving around in the weeks and months after going under the knife. Researchers from the University of Florida and Brooks Rehabilitation, a health nonprofit, showed a health nonprofit, showed that more than half of the trans surgery patients endured pain during sex, and nearly a third could not control their bladders. Wow, can you imagine? A third of them lose control of their bladders. Advocates of trans medicine present the surgeries as a trade-off, acknowledging the substantial drawbacks, but saying they're vital for those with serious discomfort in their own body. That used to be called puberty. You know, they basically pathologized puberty, and that's when they changed the definition from gender identity disorder to gender dysphoria. That was Dr. Ken Zucker of the University of Toronto. And I think what they've done effectively is they pathologized puberty, and now they're putting these kids under the knife instead of just allowing them to mature. And the real cure is puberty, as Billboard Chris says. Even so, they are rare within the transgender community. Of the estimated 1.6 million trans and non-binary age 13 and above, only 31% take cross-sex hormones. That's too many. And 16% opt for surgery, according to research by the Washington Post and KFF, a health charity. Most surgeries are breast removals for female to male transitioners. And that is a new phenomenon, by the way. It used to be the case that the overwhelming majority of people with gender identity disorder were young boys, and it usually goes back to a personality disordered mother. But this phenomenon of adolescent girls, there's two components of it. One is the adolescent onset of the gender dysphoria. It usually occurs in childhood around 5 or 6. And then the second one is the fact that they are girls. It used to be the case that they were mostly boys, and then it would happen when they were young children. Talk about, these are the people that want to protect our kids. They're the same ones that will jail us for trying to protect our children from suffering this fate of lots of bladder control, never having an orgasm, having to stay on the medication forever, and just repeat multiple surgeries. Lifetime of suffering. Okay. Andy Lee, special rebel rapporteur, says Senator Claude Kerrigan just asked Minister Arif Varani of if Liberals were inspired to freeze the bank accounts of protesters by North Korea. And this is the same guy. So Minister Arif Varani, he's the new justice minister. He took over for Lametti, who, is one of the rats who left this sinking ship and deleted his X account on the way out. Rebel managed to stop him from doing that with a lawsuit, because it was a public account and those are public records. But these are the same people. Yeah, they're going to protect us. And here is what he had to say about the invocation of the Emergencies Act in committee.
Last round, 3 minutes.
Moi, une question qui m'embête, c'est...
There's something bothering me. Why did you seize the bank accounts of protesters? What was the objective there? And where did you get the idea to do so? I'm trying to imagine in what kind of free and democratic society in the world it is possible for the authorities to seize bank accounts for protesters.
There was a freezing for a temporary period of time in the assets that were then unfrozen.
Okay, donc à quel endroit on freeze?
Right. So he's going back to the original question. The question is, where else in the free world do we freeze people's bank accounts for protesting? And what he answered there, of course, which is the ignoratio elenchi, logical fallacy, beside the point. He's not addressing the central issue. He's saying something that is true, but it fails to address the central issue. And that true statement that he made is, they're only frozen temporarily. So where in the world do we do this? The answer is, they were frozen temporarily. And this is the Liberal tactic.
So where are bank accounts frozen, which means that people can't actually spend the money in their bank accounts? So you're removing their goods for a period of time. Where is this done with no judicial authorization for the sole reason that those individuals are protesting in the streets?
I think, Senator Kerrigan, after 2 years on this committee, I think you probably know the answer to your own question, that we were dealing with a situation where there were unlawful and illegal activities, where people were being financed, including from Bitcoin sources, etc., including from foreign sources. So the idea
Where in the free world do we do this?
Was to destabilize destabilize the illegal blockade by cutting off its finances, which is effectively exactly what happened.
OK, donc c'était ça l'objectif. Comme le ministre.
So that was the goal, as Minister Lametti told us. It was to pull the rug out from under them.
Those were not my words.
OK. Donc le but, c'était de faire une pression économique, empêcher de faire.
So the goal was to put economic pressure on these people to stop them from buying groceries, paying into their health insurance, and get them out of the streets.
Not the characterization that I would put on it. The objective was to ensure that those who were funding the continued illegal blockade of this and other cities were no longer able to do so.
Okay.
So they didn't go after the financiers. They went after the protesters, and he still hasn't answered, where in the free world do we do this?
Donc, vous n'avez pas répondu à ma question.
So you didn't answer my first question. In which other democratic country is it possible to do that?
Democratically passed legislation in this country pursuant to the Emergencies Act in Canada.
OK, donc vous avez fait le droit, là. Vous vous êtes inspiré de la Corée du Nord?
So what, were you inspired by North Korea for this?
Great question.
No. I'm not going to respond to that type of question, Madam Chair.
Oh, shame on you. Shame on you for that question.
Non, mais.
Yeah. And that is what they do, is they use this tactic of shame, of course. It's Maoist. It's praise for the insider, shame and hostility for the outsider, and just the smugness. Ugh. These guys make me sick. Okay, here's Wiretap Media, and they say, Minister behind Hate Speech Authorization Bill C-63, Arif Virani, claims he cannot disclose the legal decision behind the invocation of the Emergencies Act because they are protecting the, quote, private candor, close quote, between the client and solicitor. Otherwise, they would be very happy to provide the legal decision to invoke the EA. They think you are stupid, Canada. Yeah, that's right. And this was the kind of thing that I think that first came out when Jody Thomas was on the stand. They were like, you're going to be provided with the legal briefs, but we can't disclose the legal decision. And even when Lametti was asked by Justice Rouleau, like, it sounds like you're expecting us to just trust you that there's a legal opinion out there on this. And he's like, yes, yep, that's what we're doing. Yeah, right. So we're not under rule of law, folks. We're under rule of man. So here we go.
Ma question s'adresse aux deux.
My question is for both ministers. Do you have anything to hide?
Plaisir de vous voir, sénateur.
It's a pleasure to see you, Senator. No, I don't. Then why don't you provide us with a legal opinion? I think you two probably have a lot of power in cabinet. What are you waiting for to provide us with a legal opinion? Mr. Minister, you say Justice Rouleau decided this, decided that. He studied everything, but he did not study the legal opinion. It was refused to him. So there are two things. Either it's legal or it's unlawful. What are you waiting for? If the legal opinion is lawful, then share it with us, and we'll clear it up immediately.
You think they would have shared it during the judicial review, the charter application that one of our founding members of V4F there, Eddie Cornell, was a party to. Because, yeah, I mean, that would have been the time to share that legal opinion. So there is no legal opinion, folks. Like, and now they're going to appeal it, of course. And what are they going to do? Bring forth additional evidence? Or show where the justice, the Mosley decision erred in law or fact. I think it was a pretty solid decision. And I'm looking forward to speaking with Blair Ector about that. He was the lawyer that headed that up. So I got to meet him in DC there over the weekend. And great guy too, another stoic, knows his philosophy really well. I am but an amateur student. This guy actually has a bachelor's and he's a lawyer. So much smarter than I am when it comes to the philosophy. And anyway, let's finish this one out.
Mr. Senator Carignan.
You would appreciate that it is not the contents that we're trying to protect. What is critical in protecting solicitor-client privilege is a relationship that existed, as I mentioned, for hundreds of years between solicitors and their clients, which promotes candor and free and full and fair advice.
Okay. So the solicitor of client privilege, like, I'm not buying it. Did they hire outside lawyers to do this? Because I'm of the understanding that this was the government who invoked the Emergencies Act. And They seem to be treating this legal opinion that's coming from the Justice Department, unless I'm mistaken about this somewhere. But that would be where the legal opinion comes from, right? It would be from people within government. And solicitor-client privilege usually involves a client that has a lawyer on retainer, right? So solicitor-client privilege, they're basically saying that the Liberal Party of Canada's lawyer is the Justice Department. So it sounds like a bunch of hogwash to me, for sure. We'll just, but I think the walls are closing in for these guys. Like Larry Brock has been holding their feet to the fire on this as well, and it seems like there are other voices joining this choir. So it's going to take time, folks. But we're in a fourth turning. It's a generational crisis that we go into every 4 generations. Think about it in terms of the previous fourth turning. I saw some people talking about how the Nazis experimented on people as well, and these are all sort of the social trends that we see recur every 4 generations. Hitler rose to power in 1933, and we didn't see the Nuremberg trials until about 1946. So by that yardstick, I think we're looking at about 2028 before we get these full-ups Nuremberg-style trials. And I say that, of course, not to discourage anybody. We got to keep the pressure up. This dam is about to break. There are cracks everywhere in it. But it's important to manage our expectations, right? And a lot of people, I can see that a lot of people are just sort of driven by their emotions. And this is really an emotional experience for everybody. And that is the time that you're going to really screw things up. If you act out of anger or act out of fear, then you will live to regret it. So it's important to manage those emotions, and expectation management, I think, is a big part of that. So that's the time scale that I think we're really on. We need to be playing the long game and thinking long term. 2028, I think, is probably a good place to plant a flag for Nuremberg 2. And we just got to stay frosty in the meantime and keep up that pressure. All right. Here is Andy Lee, Special Rubber Rapporteur, and she says, memos from the PCO by Jacqueline Bogdan, Deputy Secretary to Cabinet, say there were almost no protesters on Parliament Hill or surrounding streets in the days leading up to the invocation of the Emergencies Act. Okay, let's get a look at this one here. So these are the people that are protecting us with Bill C-63, the same people who invoked the Emergencies Act. All right.
So I can only conclude that you have something to hide.
Have that on the record.
Pouvez-vous m'expliquer que...
Can you say the emergency measures were essential? There's a note here, Jacqueline Bogdan, Vice Secretary, and they sent this to us after we requested this. Daily report, 11th of February, 8 a.m. A few people are on Wellington Street and surrounding streets. February 12th, 8 a.m., 0 to 5 people on Parliament Hill, a small number of people on Wellington and surrounding streets. February 14th, 8:13 a.m., nobody on the Hill, nobody on Wellington or neighboring streets. And then you invoke the Emergencies Act?
So yeah, nobody on the streets, a few people on the Hill, and that constitutes a national emergency somehow. I'll let him finish.
Madam Chair, I remember Ms. Bogdan. She's a senior official at PCO. I haven't seen the document that Senator Carignan was citing. I was part of the incident response group. There were several officials describing a dynamic situation in several jurisdictions. I'm not sure how many people were on the street corner on Wellington at 8 a.m., but I'm very comfortable with the decision the government made.
Yeah, why? Because you just got a federal court's decision declaring it ultra vires. And a couple of people are saying, well, let's see, Rob is saying 2028 is too long to wait for Nuremberg type trials. By then, the libtards will be long gone and everything will be history. Yeah, I don't know about that. I mean, I'm using the previous fourth turning as an example here, and it took about 13 years from start to finish, from Hitler's rise to the Nuremberg trials. And, a lot of people were actually brought to justice there. Although, who knows what the heck happened to Hitler? Did he really die? I don't know about that. But yeah, it is what it is, guys. So I'm just trying to manage expectations. I don't think that they're going to get away with it on this one. It seems like the pressure is mounting. We see a lot of trends that seem to indicate that the tide is turning. They're still going to keep up the pressure from their end, of course, being controlled by the Chinese Communist Party, as they are. But I think in the end, like we're going to prevail, especially given like 2024, man, we've been stacking up the wins. And I did hear a rumor that there's another win coming maybe tomorrow. I don't want to spill it just yet. We'll just wait until we get an official announcement. But yeah, we're racking up the wins, guys. And like I've been saying, the primary battle space is in the courts right now. And Rob33 over on Rumble is saying all our rights will be gone by 2028 and we will have tyrannies telling us what to do. Well, we're pretty much there now. But it's, our ancestors struggled through a hell of a lot more than this. So I think if they did it without the internet and without the levels of literacy and education and the tools that we have at our disposal, then we can do it too. We just got to get in the right mindset, and that's why I'm giving you that yardstick of 2028 or 13 years. And 2026, I think Steve is throwing that in there too. So I think that's a pretty optimistic outlook too. It could be like 2026. And 2024, like I said, seems to be the time that the tide is turning. We'll probably feel a setback at some point this year. The Chinese Communist Party, I would be shocked if they didn't interfere in the 2024 election down in the United States, or at least try to make a move on Taiwan. But in terms of the Canadian wins, like we just got with the ultra vires declaration in the Mosley decision, like that's the first time anywhere in the free world that we actually got a win against a federal government like that. So Canada does seem to be leading the way still, even since the Trucker Convoy. It seems like we've been leading the way in this. So let's just keep up the pressure, guys. Okay, I'll finish this clip out before we go on.
Senator Harder.
Thank you very much, Chair. Colleagues, I think while we're 2 weeks after Groundhog Day, we're...
Okay, there was nothing to it. All right, I'm going to move on here. Here's unacceptable Canadian girl, and she says, the same man that spent the better part of 3 years vilifying, demonizing, and segregating the unvaccinated via social media and television is now pushing for Bill C-63 online harms. The irony is thick here. Yeah, that's how the evil mind works. It just projects all of its own evil and hatred and pedophilic impulses onto the rest of us. So here is the pedophile in chief himself.
Oui, on va s'en sortir de cette pandémie par la vaccination. Puis on en connaît tous des gens qui sont en train d'hésiter un petit peu. On va continuer d'essayer de les convaincre. Mais il y a aussi des gens qui sont farouchement opposés à la vaccination. Qui sont extrémistes. Qui ne croient pas dans la science, qui sont souvent misogynes, souvent racistes aussi. C'est un petit groupe, mais qui prend de la place. Et là, il faut faire un choix en tant que leader, en tant que pays. Est-ce qu'on tolère ces gens-là ou est-ce qu'on dit, ben voyons, la plupart des gens, presque 80% des Québécois ont fait ce qu'il fallait faire, se sont fait vacciner, on veut revenir aux choses qu'on aime faire. C'est pas ces gens-là qui vont nous bloquer. Maintenant, oui, on va s'en sortir.
Yeah, okay. So for those of you who don't speak French, this is the small fringe minority, unacceptable views, and the big one there is, do we tolerate these people? He says people who don't believe in science, they're often misogynist and often racist. It's a small group, but they take up some space. And then he says, as a leader in terms of the country, do we tolerate these people? So yeah, this is the guy who's trying to protect us from online harms and hate speech. The irony abounds. But like I said, that is just projection, obviously. that the evil mind engages in all of the time. Here's Tokyo Rosie, and she says, me watching any given Justin Trudeau press conference. Yeah, this is how we all feel when I forget to give the Trudeau warning, as I often do, but here it is. Yeah, that's how we all feel when Justin Trudeau opens his mouth. All right. Okay, here is Pierre Poilievre. He says, breaking RCMP letter to Common Sense Conservatives confirms Mounties officially investigating Trudeau's hashtag arrive scam. Sign here to expose the scam. Okay, I'm not going to go sign that one, I don't think. But, petitions, they don't really hurt anything. They stopped sending me the emails, though. I don't think they're taking my email list. I think perhaps they're wise to who I am at this point. I have shown up to put PP on the spot a couple of times, even though I flubbed on the video. But anyway, they're probably going to try and steer clear of me. So here, this is from the Royal Canadian Mounted Police Commissioner. It says, Dear Mr. Poilievre, thank you for your letter of February 13th, 2024, concerning the Auditor General's findings in the COVID-19 pandemic report. 1. ArriveCan. The Royal Canadian Mounted Police is assessing all available information, including the Auditor General's performance audit report, and will take appropriate action. Thank you for bringing this matter to my attention. Yours sincerely. I don't know that he says they're actually investigating. They're just saying they will take all appropriate action. So, that's what PP is saying anyway. He says RCMP confirms Mounties officially investigating Trudeau's arrive scam. Yeah, I don't know. Is that what it says? Not really. It just says we'll take appropriate action. So we'll see. All right. And here we have government.exe is corrupt. Breaking. The Liberal government is officially under RCMP investigation for arrive scam with clear evidence of fraud, bribery, and extortion. This scandal is substantially worse than Jean Chrétien's ad scam scandal that sunk the Liberal Party for a decade. What do you think will happen with the Trudeau Liberals over arrive scam? I hope more than arrive scam really ends up laid at their feet here, because we need to have a jurisprudential reckoning in all of this. And like we're saying here, something on the level of Nuremberg 2. So here is our commentary from the House of Commons on the arrive scam investigation.
Just minutes ago, that yes, this Prime Minister's $60 million arrive scam is under RCMP investigation. This is a government that has been mired in scandal, and this issue, though on its face seems, business as usual over there, is shocking to Canadians. It's shocking because one of the contractors who worked on their failed $60 million arrive scam received $20 million, but that's $20 million of $258 million that these two guys working out of a suburban Ottawa basement have been pulling in contracts. These same two guys admitted under questioning at committee that they fraudulently won the bids. The accountability that these Liberals look to apply to this measure is the same as having the fox guard the hen house. They want internal processes. They want the CBSA to investigate themselves. Well, that does a disservice to everyone. This scandal has seen explosive testimony at committee, allegations of bribery, extortion, evidence of corruption, forgery, fraud, and threats. It's unbelievable when we have officials lying at committee, when we have clear evidence of criminal acts, when all of this evidence continues to pile up. I have yet to hear testimony of all of the hours at all of the committees that are looking at this that $60 million is good value for money. And in fact, the Auditor General confirmed that this wasn't a value for money project. And that, in fact, there was gross mismanagement. And that thousands of pages of documents are missing. In spite of them filibustering a 2-day talkathon to try and block the founders of GC Strategies from having to testify at committee. Twice they dodged summons from parliamentary committee. And yesterday, these Liberals voted against the committee motion forcing the founders of GC Strategies to come before the House. They voted against it happening. So I look forward to putting this question to the House. We'll see if Liberals are again going to work with their cover-up coalition to try and block this very important, straightforward accountability measure from passing. But their attempts before haven't stopped Conservatives working for Canadians.
Yeah, but it looks like we're getting some traction on that. RCMP are finally getting involved. Rob was just saying the scary part about everything is that there is no accountability for anything and no sign of it stopping. They just keep on with one thing after another. Yeah, we got to do it ourselves, guys. Like nobody's coming to save us. So we got to do it ourselves. And I think the biggest victory in the world right now was that ultra vires declaration with respect to the Emergency Measures Act invocation that the federal court issued in response to the charter application that was, Eddie Cornell, one of our co-founders, was a party to. So, there are those big wins, and there have been several others over the course of the last month. I had my last mask violation just withdrawn with no explanation. I put a lot of work into my defense too, but at least they do appear to be backing down. And Nova Scotia, they just announced that they're dropping the vaccine mandate for healthcare workers, and they can return to work. I don't know that they're all going to want to, but at least that's a huge step in the right direction. It's going to take time. It's a massive ship. It doesn't turn on a dime. So it's gonna turn slowly, but it is starting to correct course. I think we are seeing that, and that's not to say that it's going to be, like I said, we're not going to see any more setbacks in the future, but we just need to keep that in mind. Like there's setbacks, and we need to be playing the long game here because we know our enemies are. Dave is saying, do you expect the RCMP to investigate? Actually, well. Let's have a look at this clip and see what you guys think.
Of interest.
Oh, hang on. Let's see what you guys think when it comes to the RCMP. I know under Brenda Cuckey there was no chance whatsoever because she was clearly just a liberal who even stood on the grave of 26 people murdered in Nova Scotia with the Portapique shooting to try and advance the liberal gun confiscation agenda. And we still don't know who paid Gabriel Wortman that $450,000 that he took out of a Brinks. But we do know that the RCMP transfers money to its confidential informants using that method through Brinks. So, I'm going to say that my trust is pretty low right now. I'm a very cynical guy, too. All right, let's get a look at this. We'll see if this answers your question there in terms of whether or not we should have confidence in the RCMP to investigate these things.
So my time is very limited. Why did you not interview the primary person of interest? At the heart of this investigation was Justin Trudeau's political interference for his own personal gain and the gain of SNC-Lavalin. I can inform both of you gentlemen that in my over 30 years of experience as a defense counsel and as a Crown attorney, I have never heard of any investigation where there wasn't any attempt, whether they agreed to interview or not, any attempt to interview the person of interest. Was there at least an attempt to interview Justin Trudeau? Yes or no? No.
So
my time.
Look at this smug prick. Like, just look at that answer. Look at this guy. Was there at least an attempt to interview him?
So
just going to put his glasses back on. Where is he here?
Was there at least an attempt to interview Justin Trudeau? Yes or no?
No.
Oh my God! If that doesn't spew like this, just screams, liberal smugness. So
To the case.
Good Lord, shame on you for asking the question, right? So I think we still have a pretty hard fight ahead of us, but what choice do we have, guys? What else are we going to do? So here's End Wokeness, and this is I didn't really know where to put this in the program, but they're saying Venezuela has the lowest homicide rate in 22 years because their gangs are coming here. Read that again and let that sink in. So here is Bloomberg. Venezuela's violent deaths fall to 22-year low in migration. Rate is the lowest since 2001, Violence Observatory says. Suicide rate rises amid continued humanitarian crisis. And Venezuela's rate of violent deaths dropped to its lowest level in more than 2 decades following years of massive migration as both criminals and victims fled the nation's economic crisis. The Venezuelan Violence Observatory registered 26.8 violent deaths per 100,000 inhabitants this year from a rate of 35.3 for every 100,000 inhabitants in 2022. Roberto Bicino Leon, director of the observatory, said in a webcast Thursday, that's the lowest since 2001 and is 1/3 of what it was in 2016, he added. Okay, so I pointed this out before. I don't really have any special insight into who's sending the bulk of the migrants to the southern border in the U.S. Of course, we're seeing people from all countries, from all over the African continent. We're seeing jihadis, have shown known terrorists that I think are, we can say, have been identified, known jihadis crossing the border. Also, these large groups of fighting age Chinese males who are probably coming into the country to sabotage. So it's going to be like a hybrid warfare, I think, is what they're going for. They're trying to overwhelm the United States with immigration for the purpose of imploding it as a state. When I say they, I mean the Chinese Communist Party. I think they're at the center of all this. And of course, we have a higher per capita immigration rate in Canada than they do in the United States. But when it comes to like the caravans coming from South America, I do think that Maduro is probably a driving force in all of that. And Venezuela, as we know, it fell to socialism, communism, whatever, just a few short years ago, and their currency became toilet paper almost overnight. People shooting zoo animals and their pets for food, because this is what happens everywhere where you implement communism, socialism. And another tactic that everybody on the communist side of things tends to admire Fidel Castro for is the use of prisoners, right? Like this was something that the United States did back in the day when they were trying to cripple the Castro regime. Was they said, okay, anybody who wants to come to the United States to flee communism in Cuba, why don't you just let them wait on the beach and we'll come and pick them up. And that's what Castro did, is he emptied his prisons. So the United States thought they were coming to get like a bunch of freedom-loving patriots, and it turned out that they just imported a massive number of criminals, especially to Florida, and the crime rate just soared. So I think that is part of the strategy here, is that communists like Maduro are probably going to empty their prisons and send people to the United States. And that has a lot to do with why we're seeing these massive caravans of overwhelmingly fighting age males. And okay, here is the Ottawa Citizen. And this is something on the military side of things. Military worried fake wolves exercise pandemic propaganda efforts undercut public trust. Documents. Quote, good intent, questionable capability, poor execution, close quote, explained then Chief of Defense Staff General John Vance. Now, General John Vance is the guy who cemented his final legacy as our longest serving, oldest CDS, by gaslighting all the troops with all of this nonsense about sexual misconduct, when in fact it was all projection. He was exactly the kind of guy who engaged in exactly that kind of conduct for his entire career. He even fathered 2 children for whom he never took any responsibility, with his mistress using his own staff officers for Kleenex. So But this is David Pugliese too. He doesn't know dick about the military, but he does write about it an awful lot for the Ottawa Citizen. I actually got him to change the headline of one of his articles one time just by commenting on it because he was saying something about the Canadian military should tie promotion to physical fitness. And I was like, what are you talking about? We have that policy already, you idiot. You have to pass your fitness test in order to get promoted. Okay, so here is the Ottawa Citizen, David Pugliese, and he says, the Canadian Forces worried that the public would think its previous efforts to test propaganda techniques during the pandemic to a bungled exercise in which the military spread disinformation about rampaging wolves, according to newly released records. Military officers worried the 2020 Wolves training fiasco, combined with previous coverage in this newspaper about their efforts during the COVID outbreak to test new methods to manipulate Canadians, could have, quote, the effect of undermining our credibility and public trust, close quote. You think, guys, you really think that your efforts to manipulate us might undermine our trust in you? And all of this is coming out of CJOC, by the way, the Canadian Joint Operations Center. That's where a lot of the careerists end up, and there's a concentration of careerist senior officers there that really have no idea what they're doing and don't follow any of their own policies and have no appreciation for, the fact that we live in a democracy and there's a need to respect things like human rights. So I'm not surprised to see this kind of thing coming out of CJOC. Let's see. The October 2020 exercise involving fake letters about wolves on the loose, which caused a panic in one community in Nova Scotia, was a propaganda test gone awry, generating embarrassing news coverage across Canada and in some U.S. media outlets. Just as that incident was being reported by media outlets, a non-government group called the Organized Crime and Corruption Reporting Project released details about the Canadian Forces spending more than $1 million on training on how to modify public behavior. That training had been used by the parent firm of Cambridge Analytica, the company that was at the center of a scandal in which personal data on Facebook users was provided to U.S. President Donald Trump's political campaign. In addition, this newspaper had reported months earlier the Canadian Forces had tested new propaganda techniques during the pandemic and had concocted a plan to influence the public's behavior during coronavirus outbreak. The various reporting set off alarm bells inside the military's public affairs branch at National Defense Headquarters in Ottawa, according to documents released under the Access to Information Law. Yeah, it really is the optics that they're primarily concerned with when it comes to the senior officers, especially at CJOC. It's how they look. That's really kind of all that matters. And pensions. That's all they ever talk about. Colonel Stephanie Godin wrote Brigadier General Jay Jansen on October 16th, 2020, warning that since the story about the fake wolf letters broke, quote, there has been a resurgence of media and public criticism regarding perceived nefarious IO/IA propaganda. I think that's information operations / information something propaganda anyway against the Canadian public, close quote. She also noted how then Army Commander Lieutenant General Wayne Eyre contacted Laurie Ann Kempton, then the Assistant Deputy Minister for Public Affairs at National Defense. Eyre warned to, quote, discuss how the wolf letter issue could be removed from being conflated with, close quote, the $1 million training course on influence techniques, as well as the previous articles on military pandemic propaganda plans, Godin wrote. Eyre, later promoted to top soldier, also reassured then Chief of Defense Staff General Jonathan Vance that the Wolf debacle, quote, was a low-level initiative gone bad, close quote. The military had determined Canadian Forces propaganda specialists had forged a letter from the Nova Scotia government warning local residents that wolves were on the loose. But the letter, which was supposed to be used only for training, had somehow leaked out to the public, creating panic in the area. Vance replied to Eyre, quote, good intent, questionable capability, poor execution, close quote. Despite knowing almost immediately the Canadian Forces was at fault for the wolf letter debacle, some inside Ottawa headquarters suggested trying to label the incident as a creation of, quote, Russian disinformation, close quote, according to the defense sources. Yeah, everything that makes us look bad is Russian disinformation, by the way. Okay, so on October 15th, 2020, a public affairs officer based in Washington passed a message to headquarters from a U.S. expert in Russian propaganda who claimed the Wolf story coverage in this newspaper was suspect. The woman, whose name is censored from the records, suggested Russian disinformation might be involved, telling defense officials this newspaper had in the past, quote, attacked the Canadian forces in Latvia for working with Nazis, close quote. Well, you probably shouldn't work with Nazis. I don't know if that's really an attack. It's more like a criticism, but they're going to take it as an attack and probably, counterattack with some kind of IAIO operation. So yeah, I think that's what it is. What is it? Information operations, information. I can't think of it. In fact, the newspaper has never reported any such information. That makes it even better. So not only did they not criticize them, and criticism is not attack, they never even reported it in the first place. Okay. National Defense noted in an email Monday that the claims from the U.S. specialists don't reflect the department's views. Concerns on Russian and Chinese disinformation have reached a fever pitch in Western nations in recent years, with various militaries and spy agencies sounding the alarm over such activities. But Western militaries and governments have also used claims of Russian disinformation in attempts to undercut media reports they don't like. Yeah, exactly. Everything we don't like is Russian disinformation. Every bit of criticism we face is Russian disinformation. When asked by the CBC, and that has been the case since Hillary Clinton lost the 2016 election. When asked by the CBC in 2022 about the New York Times article that revealed Canadian special forces were operating in Ukraine, Defense Chief Eyre claimed the media were helping Russian disinformation efforts. So were they there or weren't they? Canadian Special Forces, however, did not deny the New York Times reporting. The Canadian Army noted in a statement Tuesday that it had made changes to make sure an incident such as the Wolves training fiasco didn't happen again. That includes improved oversight of psychological operations and clearly marking documents used for training. Yeah, sure, guys. Whatever. Whatever. I can't believe this. Okay, so I got video unavailable on this because somebody posted a video of what appears to be Trudeau's daughter going on a drunk tirade. So I thought it was just a little bit of entertainment that I could throw in near the end of the show here. And it's down. It's down already. It went up this morning. I lined it up for this podcast, and already it's video unavailable. The video has been removed by the uploader, so I don't know what's going on there. Down the memory hole it goes, I guess, but it's still up on X. So here is Hussein E, and he says, do y'all reckon this internet video features Justin Trudeau's daughter? Share your thoughts below. So could be, definitely could be. I don't know, guys, but sometimes it's
over here, eh? He has your hope. My dad is only trying to take me to Jamaica because I asked him for a Jamaican vacation, and he said okay. And he's taking all of your taxpayers' money to take me to Jamaica.
Or she got an audience of yours.
They're all bad.
There's all these people.
What about the conservatives?
So?
The conservatives are the Kanye West. I sold my soul to Kanye West.
Really? What's your favorite Kanye album? Did you see when you
dropped out of college because I did drop out of college.
What college were you at?
University of Toronto. You see all the spray paint? That was me.
That was all you?
Yeah, that was me. I did that there.
That's really impressive, actually. That's really
Free Israel. Israel is for the people.
Really?
Okay?
Yeah.
I was Israel.
Oh, shit.
I cut off all my hair for Israel. This is a wig.
Really?
Okay, yeah.
That's impressive. They were thinking.
Yes, my dad's Justin Trudeau.
What's your name?
He's trying to take all of your money. Don't vote for the Liberal Party. Vote for Conservative. Guys, my dad's Justin Trudeau. He's trying to take your money to take me to Jamaica. Vote for Justin Trudeau. He's trying to take me to Jamaica.
She created a whole audience in McDonald's.
Over here, eh?
Terry saying, unfortunately, not her. Yeah, I don't know. I just thought it was kind of funny, so I'd throw it in here. And here they are. This is the picture of the girl, and this is Sophie Gregoire Trudeau here. I don't know. I'm looking at it and I'm going, it's probably just a girl pretending, some drunk girl pretending to be her. But it was making the rounds this morning, and they did take it off of YouTube like right away. So I thought it would be just kind of fun to throw it in here anyway. It could be, I don't know, could be, but I think the nose looks a little different here. This woman, this young woman seems to have a more narrow nose, but it might be the way she's smiling too. Who knows really? Anyway, kind of funny. I thought it was funny. All right, that brings us all the way to the Veterans for Freedom website, guys. You can subscribe to our newsletter by clicking subscribe here. Join Veterans for Freedom if you're a veteran by clicking join here, and support Veterans for Freedom by clicking support here. You have the option to donate to us directly to help with their operational costs, like my StreamYard account and the website, or you can donate to our support fund. Everybody who donates gets a chance to vote on where the funds go every month. Last month's winner was Kayla Pollock. She was made quadriplegic when she took the jab, and we've been advancing that story everywhere. It was Veterans for Freedom who broke that story, so and it seems to be getting international attention. I'm going to show you that here in a second, so stay tuned. Don't go signing off just yet. And we also gave you a chance to send 10% of your donation to the Veterans Association Food Bank. All right, and speaking of the international attention for Kayla Pollock, check this out. This is Alex Jones. This is one of the most important reports we've ever released. Share this report. Medical staff officers assisted suicide to a Canadian woman paralyzed from COVID shots. So here is the video that Alex Jones is sharing out.
Kayla Pollock was one of millions coerced and deceived into getting the deadly COVID shots when they were mandated in 2021.
Could you tell us why you decided to get the COVID-19 vaccine?
Basically, a lot of it had to do with the things I was hearing on TV. So there was a lot of fear just being screamed at me by not just the TV, but also when you hear the WHO is on TV telling you that this is like a deadly pandemic and, people with immune disorders are going to, die from COVID-19 more likely than other people. I was hearing about that, and my dad was dying in long-term care at the time. In order to go see him, I needed the shots. In order to go to work, I needed the shots.
A week after receiving the Moderna booster shot, she fell to the floor and was paralyzed for 30 minutes. Another episode happened a week later, and shortly after that, she became paralyzed from the neck down. The first doctor told her that this was something that often happens to people when they're upset, and that it was all in her head.
He told me that this was something that often happens to people when they're upset, and that this was in my head. And the good news was that I would get better because I was essentially having an episode that was some sort of psychotic episode. I asked him when I would get better, and he said, it's up to you, really.
A second doctor was honest with her, but had to keep it hidden.
The second diagnosis, a doctor came to me and he whispered in my ear and he said, I think there's something seriously wrong with you. I do not think you're faking. He said, I have a neurologist or a radiologist who's willing to read your report at home. If you go into the scanner right now, I can get that done.
They found a massive lesion on her spine, and the doctor told her it was most likely caused by the vaccine, and that he's seen many cases just like it.
Most likely it's going to be probably, if I'm using my gut impression here, from the vaccine.
So other people have had it though?
Many people have had it. Many.
Kayla spent several months in the hospital's rehabilitation center, where the staff offered her medical assisted suicide on 2 occasions, which is the only assistance the medical system seems to offer.
Rehab didn't do a whole lot. When I was sent home from rehab, I was told that I'd be getting a lot of personal support hours, and I got home from rehab, and for 4 days straight, nobody came.
If this story is disturbing to you, then it means you still have a heart, and your human soul has managed to survive these dark days. The trauma has been too much for many who have disassociated into cold indifference and fail to fully recognize the crimes that are being committed against all of humanity. Celia Farber wrote that what has happened and is happening is by far the worst crime ever committed, worse than the atomic bombs and all wars combined. We all struggle to fight off the feeling that in some way we have already died. And the daily challenge is not to disassociate, but to bear witness, since every person still alive now is either a victim of the shots or a witness. And we should be prepared for these criminals to try this again. The mainstream media is now talking about strange cases of the measles.
The highly infectious measles virus is spreading across more of the country, including in Florida, where a concerning outbreak is growing. And the latest CDC data shows more than 30 cases nationwide this year across more than a dozen states.
Is there something about this year that is making people more vulnerable to the measles right now?
Yeah, it's a combination of people not getting their vaccines on schedule during the pandemic and then just not necessarily getting to the doctor's office.
If you are looking for ways to help, Veterans for Freedom have launched a Give, Send, Go for Kayla to raise funds for a service dog. Reporting for InfoWars, this is Greg Reese.
So pretty phenomenal that InfoWars has picked this up. It's going international, it's going viral. So that is, that's positive, I guess. It's unfortunate that it has to come to this, obviously, but I think they make a good point there when they talk about how our purpose right now is to bear witness and to bring these people to account. Like it's going to take time. But you know, and the Americans, like we were just down there at CPAC, man, they're phenomenal people. And we got to wake them up to what's really going on in Canada because, you know, we're like America's little brother. And they love us, man. They're great to us. So, and I don't think that they understand it. I don't know that their primary threat is coming from the southern border. They don't even really seem to be aware of what's going on in their northern border. So this is the kind of thing that can really draw the right kind of attention for us. So that Americans will wake up to the fact that there's a proxy government for the Chinese Communist Party on their northern border. And hopefully, you know, the cavalry comes, although I do find it a little distasteful that we are always expecting the Americans to come and rescue us. They go off and do all our dying for us, and all we ever do is talk smack about them. I mean, well, at least our media does, not me, not us. But yeah, I'm really, I think, optimistic now that I see the Americans sitting up and taking note. You know, we've had Tucker Carlson come and do an event here. He seems to be very hip to this, and Joe Rogan is constantly bashing Trudeau at this point. So those are some pretty big names. We got Alex Jones, we got Joe Rogan, we got Tucker Carlson. The Gen X'ers are leading the way here, guys. Because that's what has to happen to resolve this crisis is we got to get the boomers out of our institutions and bring in some fresh blood to lead us out of this crisis. So that's it for me today, guys. That brings us all the way back to Sigmund Freud. One of my favorites, like he's, you know, the father of psychiatry, I guess, but in terms of his essay writing, I think that he was pretty phenomenal. He had a lot of insight into the human condition, even where it was flawed. He reached some erroneous conclusions, I think, as well. But I mean, he doesn't get enough credit these days in terms of his contribution to you know, the study of human psychology and whatnot, the insights that he provided, the talking method, I think in particular, like he never even expected the talking method to be as prolific as it is today. Such important work. Anyway, and yeah, he was a coke addict, I know. But all right, so Sigmund Freud, he says, most people do not really want freedom because freedom involves responsibility, and most people are frightened of responsibility. And like I said, I think they're also frightened of the risk that comes along with that responsibility and freedom. But you know, with great risk comes great reward. So that I think is underappreciated in our Canadian culture. All right, I'll throw to a few comments before I sign off on here. Over on Rumble, Dalvinus Tiv is saying a lot of Gen X are also the cause. They are not strictly by generation. It's by mindset. Well, yeah, I'm talking about a social trend, not a social rule. I'm not a black and white thinker like the boomers are. And obviously there are some good boomers out there as well. It's Star Wars. If you haven't heard me talk about this before, the problem in Star Wars is that Obi-Wan is the only Jedi in his generation, and followed by him is the midlife nomad, which is the generational archetype of Gen X, and that's Han Solo. And the way the fourth turning resolves is when Han Solo is the oldest man left standing at the end of Return of the Jedi, and all the Ewoks are singing the song and dancing. Yeah, read The Fourth Turning is here if you haven't read Generations and The Fourth Turning to get a better understanding of that. I think it's probably the most important book anybody could be reading right now. I'll throw out a few more comments over here. And let's see. Lori is saying Dr. Phil now as well, Jeff. Yeah. Yeah, I guess so. Eh? Like Dr. Phil is kind of like the Freud of our generation. I don't know about that. Freud really did a great job of deconstructing the mind, and there have been other insights since him. Jung might have been a little bit closer to the reality, but he provided a really good model for the mind and for an approach to healing people psychologically. And Cora says they know, Jeff, there was a report tabled last year titled Project Maple Leaf by Lieutenant Steve Rogers and Campaign for America. Oh yeah, they do know. That's right. Steve Rogers has been pretty engaged in terms of the Canadian front as well. But I mean, like the big names now are really engaged when we're talking about Alex Jones and Joe Rogan and Tucker Carlson. And didn't I see Elon Musk tweeting something about this? Yeah, he picked up a Canadian story there recently as well. So the tide is turning, guys. It's just going to take time. And Rob says, have a great day, everyone. Thanks for the stream, Jeff. And he's given us the victory sign, Maple Leaf and triple slashy. All right, guys, that is it for me for today. Thanks very much for tuning in. And until next time, stay frosty and stay safe.
Won't you help to sing these songs of freedom? It's all I ever have. Redemption songs.